Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's very special episode. Today is episode 12 of 12, 1, 2, Parmjit Speaks. And today's episode is called Mindfulness in the Workplace. And I have a very special guest in this. I always say all of my guests are special, but today I have Leticia. And Leticia, I'm probably going to butcher your last name. And so please, I apologize if I do. Please correct me. Escamillo, is that how you say it?
Escamilla.
Escamilla. Okay, see, I told you I was going to butcher it.
Nope, it's all good.
So Leticia has done a lot of mindful work. She runs workshops and she has her own company. And she is also a meditation, I'm going to say a meditation master. But Leticia, I think you can give a better introduction than I can. So please, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Thank you. I'm so excited to be on the show. I am Leticia Escamilla, and I help people reduce stress and increase their peace, balance, and well-being. So, as you mentioned, I use mindfulness tools to do that. Meditation is definitely one of them, but I also use movement, yoga, journaling, breath work, all of these different practices to basically go into the workplace and share how these practices can be done easily, effectively, and also not take up a lot of your time. You literally can do them with no one even knowing that you're doing them. And it doesn't have to take up so much of your time. I think people think we need to do so much in order to have this Zen experience when really we just need to do little things every single day to really incorporate that. So that's what I go out in the world and do. And that's through workshops, that's through on-stage presentations, and through my journal that I created as well. I talk about mindfulness, and then you have the tool to work with based on the things that I share.
Absolutely. And can you share with the audience that name of your journal? I know I've mentioned it a few, well, I mentioned it in some of the marketing that I've done for this episode,
Yes,
but can you mention the name of that journal?
of course. Yes. So it's me time, mindful moments to reflect, release, and reconnect. I actually have it right here too. So here's the journal.
Awesome. Awesome. And so, Leticia, speaking about mindfulness in the workplace, can you share just a brief overview of, so when thinking about mindfulness in the workplace, especially for individuals who are not familiar with what that means, right? Because
Yeah.
it can be such a broad term. What does mindfulness in the workplace mean to you?
So, mindfulness simply is a quick definition of mindfulness overall is being present in the moment that we're in. So, right now, I'm here with you. I shouldn't be thinking about my to-do list, the work I have to get done, all the things that are happening in life. My idea is just being here with you right now, not thinking about the past and what has happened back then, or thinking about the future. So that's a quick definition of what mindfulness is, because as you said, it's really broad. But then when
Mhm.
we bring it to the workplace, it's about just being able to take moments to just disconnect from all the things and just be present in where we're at. So, a lot of things that I hear from when I go into corporate settings is that they don't take a break. And
Yeah.
we're all guilty of that. I know I have definitely done that in the past, where we just continue to work past the break, or we bring our food right there in front of our computer because we have to still answer the emails or
Yeah.
do what we need to do for the project. And that is not mindfulness. Mindfulness is being able to stop and disconnect and be with the things that we are doing. So be with our food when we're eating, so that we can go back feeling full, refreshed, and you're actually going to be more involved with the email or the work that you're doing. Because when we're trying to eat and we're trying to get things done, something's not getting our attention. And honestly, neither of those things are fully getting our attention. And we think we need to push through that and do it in that way. But honestly, when we are focused on one thing at a time, we're able to be present with it and get it done to just a more of an effective way. But I feel like we've been programmed that we need to multitask and we need to get all these things done at once. And nothing really gets done to the best of our ability when we do it in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great that you mentioned that. I've read several studies that talk about exactly that, about how as a society we have been conditioned to think that we need to multitask, and we think we are being effective when
Right.
the opposite is true. We are not
Mm-hmm.
effective. Rather than just focusing on one thing and just getting really good at that and succeeding in that one task, we end up not really succeeding at any of our tasks. We do them, and and I shouldn't say this. I shouldn't say this on while I'm recording a podcast, but I'm gonna use the term half-assed. Right,
Yep,
what
I
we
knew
end
it.
up
I knew you were
doing,
going there.
we end up doing a lot of these tasks half-assed. So, um, can you, Leticia, share specific examples? So, in some of the workshops that you've done, can you share specific examples of how some of that mindfulness that you have taught individuals, how it's positively impacted either those individuals or those teams that you worked with?
Yeah. So what I've noticed with the individuals is that they are really adapting to taking time for themselves. They will take that break to just take in a few deep breaths and then go back into the work. They're starting to take actual breaks to disconnect for that 30, 45 hour time frame. They're going for walks more in within the area that they work. And as a team, what I love about it is that even though the mindfulness practices really is an individual work, when
Hmm.
they're doing it as a team, though, even though they're doing their own practice and figuring out what's going to work best for them, I've noticed that they're supportive of one another because we've done this work together and they realize, like, just as much as I need it, my team member needs it as well. So when they see someone going for a walk, they appreciate that and go and root them on, or will go join them, and like,
Yeah.
oh, let's walk together. And now you're creating this bond as a team instead of it just being like work, work, work stuff. Like, when are you, did you get your part done? Or, so and so didn't do that. And now you're creating like a real bond of just connection so that when you go back into the workplace, you can appreciate each other and you both feel refreshed. And going back to what we were just speaking of before, you're going to be more present in whatever you're working on that you didn't finish, or maybe you're starting something new, whatever it is, right? So that's what I've noticed the most about going in and working with teams and bringing these concepts to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think, right, to your point, I think it also brings a level of peace or that state of mind to individuals who are practicing
Mm,
that mindfulness. And I also
yeah.
think it brings an element of humanness that I think sometimes
Yeah.
when we're working, we tend to forget. And so since you've been doing these workshops, and I'm really curious about this, in corporate settings, have you faced any resistance? I'm curious.
Yeah. So a couple things come to mind when you ask that. So the really cool thing about it is if I'm coming in to do something like
Hmm.
this is definitely something that the corporation as a whole, so you got to think the leaders somewhere at the top really see the benefit in providing these types of tools for their team members. But the thing that is interesting is that not everyone, maybe as the team, is like, there some are skeptical, right? They're like, what is
Yeah.
this? Like, because I bring yoga in there, we're meditating, we're closing our eyes, we're starting to journal, we're
Yeah.
doing these things. And you do notice that some just are quiet the whole time. They don't say anything. And some of them you can just tell are processing, or just going, okay, like, let me just kind of observe and see what this is about. But it's funny because a lot of the times the ones that seem quiet and you're not sure if you're getting anything through to them
Yeah.
are the ones that will come and have a conversation with you at the end of, like, you know what, I like when you said about that, I never thought of it like that, or I never considered that.
Yeah.
So I think there is maybe some resistance in the team because they all have different values, or they hear different things about mindfulness, especially when it comes to
Hmm.
the yoga and the meditation part. We seem to connect it to religion, so there's that part. And it's like, no, this is just to help you, like, calm down, bring that peace, be less stressed,
Yeah. Yeah.
so when I share more of that, they start to open up and realize. And one of the things I've also come to the conclusion of is that coming into their space, if I'm there, I'm meant to be there. And some are not going to maybe jump on and be like, okay, I'm all for doing all these things. Maybe it's just their first time experience it and they need time to process it a little bit longer, and maybe on their own secretly, like, go, okay, I'm going to try and see what
Yeah.
happens. And then of course some love it. They gravitate towards it, or they're already doing it in their personal, or they've kind of taken it into the workplace. And so now they're like, oh my gosh, you're feeding me even more. And it gives them permission to to be even more of that in the workplace, because they're like, oh, okay, they're all on board with this now. So it's been different, but I do notice that if the company is having me come in, then this is definitely something that they want for their team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I absolutely think a lot of organizations, whether big or small, should absolutely, take advantage of, the
Yeah.
mindfulness and some of the breath work that you were mentioning. And especially, right. So Leticia, so I'm a project manager. And I can only speak for myself, but I know project management can be very stressful. It is, it can make you anxious, especially when
Mm,
you have a series of tasks that are waiting to get done and you have deadlines to meet. And especially because a lot of responsibility, while we have project teams that we work with, oftentimes
right.
a lot of responsibility falls on the project manager. So you mentioned a lot of tools. You already mentioned, the journaling. You mentioned the breath work. You mentioned meditating. What other tools can you, would you recommend that individuals use, and how would they use them? And the reason I ask is something else that you mentioned early on is you can do a lot of this and it doesn't take a lot of time, because I
Yeah.
know as a project manager, and I'm sure a lot of other project managers would agree, time is one thing that we don't always have. And so sometimes maybe mindfulness, meditating is not our list of priorities, but what are some other tools that individuals like project managers can use to relieve some of their stress, to be less anxious, and that don't take a lot of time?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is that if you're not prioritizing yourself in some way, you need to. Like, that's the first tool. Like,
Yeah.
and I love that you asked tools, because these are tools. But I think at the same time, people are always looking for the quick answer. Give me something quick, right? That
Yeah.
drive-through method of like, I want to go through the drive-through, give me my hamburger and fries in the bag so I can go and continue to go on. And it just starts with, you got to already have that mindset of wanting to put yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we all fall into a trap, whether it's the type of position we are, women in general, whatever it is, we put others first. And so my whole thing is like, we have to reverse that. It has to be you first. It has to be, because if it's not you first, then how are you going to be the best version of yourself for someone else if you can't be it for you? So the first tool is just put yourself first, whatever
Yeah.
that looks like. Now, to dissect the tools, it's not about more tools. It's about, how do we take the tools I've already mentioned, the meditation, the journaling, the movement. These
Mm-hmm.
are all things that we can do seated at our desk. These are
Mm-hmm.
all things that we can do in 1 minute. So one of the things I do in my presentations is I ask the audience, can we all agree that 1 minute is a worthy investment in ourselves? So I'm asking you, is 1 minute a worthy investment in yourself?
Yeah. Of course.
Absolutely. 1 minute, 60 seconds, however you want to dissect this, right? So 1 minute. So thinking about it, if you are busy, no matter what job you do, the project manager, all the things, give yourself 1 minute a day to do any of these things. So meditation doesn't have to be 15, 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. Sure, if you have the time, or if there's certain days you can get into one, yes, of course. But if you can do it 1 minute a day, just close your eyes and just disconnect from all the things, right? For 1 minute. If you can move for 1 minute, and moving. So another thing I do in workshops or in my presentations, I have everyone put their hands up and wave and start shaking. So do it with me. So just shake.
Yay.
And if you do this for 3 minutes or for 1 minute straight, 3 minutes, I know I said 1 minute, right? You do this 1 minute straight, you're going to get tired. It's going to start to burn a little bit, which is not bad as long as the body is saying, yes, I can do it, right? If there's pain or
Yeah.
discomfort. But if you do this for 1 minute, you're going to notice that you're just kind of like refreshed. You're going to notice that your heart rate starts to go up, and you just shifted yourself in a whole nother way just for 1 minute. So these are the things that we can take with these, mindfulness tools, and do it very quickly. So after, and you can now, if you do each one for 1 minute, let's just say you did those two, that was 2 minutes. So
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
you've done even more for yourself. Like, congrats. And then you can go on about your day, right? I do these things sometimes in a parked car.
Uh-huh.
It's very important for most of these things to not be in moving vehicles, especially if you're moving the vehicle. but you can do them in a parked car before you're going into a meeting or before whatever, right? Just to get yourself back to your body, to your heart, and get your mind right, you know? So that would be the way I would advise those tools.
Yeah, no, I love that. And something else that you mentioned, and I think it's so true. You talked about, you have to prioritize yourself. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And so many of us are guilty of not prioritizing ourselves, right?
Yeah.
I am so bad at it. And every time I think I'm doing better, I take two steps back but I have to remember, put yourself first, and I think back to, what they say on planes, right? They say in the case of an
Mm-hmm.
emergency, when your what is it? They say your airbag drops,
Yep. When the mask drops,
yeah,
you
when the
put it
mask
on you
drops,
first.
right, rather than helping somebody else. And I
Yeah.
remember every time they say that, even now, and even though I know they're right, and I know I need to prioritize myself, even now when they say that, it makes me uncomfortable. It makes me
Mm,
uncomfortable, the thought of putting the mask on myself first on the plane rather than helping somebody next to me, because that's just who I've been. But
right.
I think you bring up such an important point, and it's such an important message to everyone that is listening, whether they're in project management or not in project management or doing something completely different. It's so
Sure.
important for us to prioritize ourselves.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
when you think about that airplane scenario, which I hope no one is ever in that scenario. It's such a, it's a great scenario when we're talking about this, but it's such a not fun scenario to think about
Right.
because something's happening,
Right.
that could be devastating. So, but I think about it, it's only 2 seconds, right? I mean, I've seen movies. Hopefully we'll never experience it, but you've seen movies, right, where you actually do see it come down because they
Yeah.
talk about it and they show it as the example, but I've never seen them come down, right?
Yeah.
So I've
Yeah.
seen it in movies. So I know what it looks like when those masks drop down. And if you think about it, it only takes a few seconds for you to go, whoop, you know what I mean? And put it
Yeah.
on your face and then to go into your, next to someone. And that's just to say if the someone next to you isn't aware or able or conscious to put it on themselves, right? We're
Yeah.
we're thinking like, oh, that person's going to need me, right? But they only really need it if they happen to be asleep or if it's a child or something like that. But it's seconds. It's seconds of putting that mask on. Even if you just hold it and wait to get that other person situated, then you can do it fully and put it around your head and things like that, right? But yeah, I just think about them like it's only seconds that you just need to do that and then you can be of service. So it's
Yeah,
the same in real
exactly.
life, right? You take that 1 minute every day for yourself, 1 minute, and then you can be of service all day long.
Absolutely, absolutely. And and I right, the other saying is true that you hear all the time, that you cannot take care of others, you cannot love others until you take care of and love yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, for me, that's something else that also took a long while for me to learn, because I'm used to being the caregiver. I'm used to being the one who
Yeah.
takes care of individuals, but it was literally making me sick doing
Mm-hmm.
that. And
Yeah.
instead I had to shift my focus, say no. In order to You need to first love yourself, and part of loving yourself is taking care of yourself. And I think mindfulness kind of plays such a big part of that. And so in this remote era, Leticia, so a lot of individuals, specifically speaking about project managers, a lot of us are remote. And in an era where a lot of individuals now, even outside of the project management community, where a lot of individuals are remote, what are some things that individuals can practice at home, in order to practice mindfulness? And again, I know you mentioned a few things, and you mentioned that a lot of these are just 1 minute exercises that individuals can do. But what are some other things that you think individuals can do, just maybe the
Yeah.
comfort of their desk?
Absolutely. So there's so many things. One, I mean, I have been working from home now probably over 8 years. So it's way before the pandemic and then definitely obviously during, and I still do it now. Like I don't go into an office, or I choose to maybe go out on certain days to like coffee shops. But I mean, you're at home.
Yeah, yeah,
That's the first thing, right? Like all the amenities that you need are at home for you to be able to create sacred spaces and have like your moments. But you know speaking of tools and giving some tools. So one, it would be go for a walk. So going outside and going for a walk, like just yesterday, for example, I knew I had to be on a Zoom and I decided to go
Mm-hmm.
for my walk while I was on the Zoom. I was still engaged, and again, I understand that maybe talking to, your audience may be a mixture of entrepreneurs and, individuals who are, part of corporations and businesses. And
Yeah.
so I get it that this can be a little bit tricky, but if sometimes, if you're okay, if your company is okay with you being, having your camera off and you have your headphones in and you can go for a walk and still be on the Zoom, why not? Right. That's a form of multitasking
Yeah.
that, it can be done, and you're getting the sun rays, you're getting the breeze, you're getting the refresh. And I felt great after, and I felt very alert. So, but if, so take a walk and step away from the devices, right? Go for a
Yeah.
walk, go step outside. Or if you don't have time for the walk, if you have a backyard or a patio, just sit out there and just let the sun hit you for just 1 minute, right? Going back to that 1 minute. Being that you're at home, if you have pets, take time to disconnect from the devices and play with your pets. They're going to love it. They want your
Yeah.
attention, right? So you have pets for a reason. So maybe that's your excuse to go out and go for a walk, or just playing with them inside the house and, letting them love on you and you love on them. So, I know a lot of companies now are allowing pets in the workplace just because we know how therapeutic and loving and how
Absolutely.
calming they can help with our, our mental health. So if you have pets, play with them. Or if you happen to be at home and your family is there, take a break and spend time with them, so that way you're bringing in some work life balance.
Yeah.
If you have that advantage to say, hey, I'm going to take 30 minutes and I'm going to spend time with my family or my kids who are here, just so now they get some of my time, so that maybe later on I have to work a little bit later, or later on, instead of giving them so much of the time, since I dedicated that within my day, I can go and take that time to myself, right? So there's so many advantages, I feel like, when we are home, that
Yeah.
I don't think we take advantage of, because everything is there, right? Like, you
Yeah.
could do a workout there, you can, take a shower after your workout and then get into work, right? Especially like if a lot of us, and I could be just kind of going on a tangent, but you know one of the things that I don't like to do when I work out is like go outside in the cold. Like, that sounds like horrifying to me. So I've
Yeah.
created my own gym space here in my
Hmm.
home. And so I go into my own gym space, I go there, and guess what? Like, I have a shower, I have all the accommodations of a gym here in my home. And then I can start my day and get on Zooms and get on meetings and do fun podcasts and do all the things I do. So again, I just think, like, how can you take your home and create this sanctuary, or with what you have, or if you need to build things out or dedicate space, like taking that time to do that. So yeah, I could
Yeah.
go on a whole thing more, girl, like, but that's what I'll leave you with today.
Yeah, no, I think those are great tips. And me too, right, Leticia? So like you, way before COVID, I was remote for a very long time.
Yeah.
And it's also so yes, we have access to so many things at home. Something else that I think is also really important is, so like you, I also have a gym at home. I forget sometimes though to again take care of me and get up from my desk. It's so easy. I think there's also a misconception, right? That a lot of people think that if you're working remotely, you're not getting a lot of work done. I actually think it's the opposite. I tend to work longer hours when I'm sitting here because it's easy to sit here for hours on end and lose track of time. But I
Yeah.
think it's important to remember to get up, take a walk,
Yes.
and do the things that bring you joy. And you mentioned, getting up and spending time with your family. When I lived in Jersey on the East Coast, I lived at home for quite some time actually. And one of the things that I loved doing when I was working from home is I would take a break and go have a cup of tea with my stepmother. And it was
Mm,
just 10, 15 minutes, but it brought me joy. It relaxed me. It was a stress
mm-hmm.
reliever for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, you brought up so many great points.
Mm,
I think that's absolutely important. Um, Something else that you talked about earlier, and I think I mentioned it once or twice now, breath work. So
mm.
breath work, could you share maybe one or two breathwork exercises that maybe people could do from the comfort of their desk
Yeah.
that individuals can do that is a stress reliever and that could just help relax individuals.
Yes. So if you like, let's go ahead and just close our eyes.
Okay. I'm gonna
And
smile because I smile all the time.
that's okay. I'll smile with you. And just go ahead and take a deep breath in. So when I say deep breath, I want you to feel the belly rise, and I want you to imagine and feel the breath traveling up from the belly to the ribs, into the chest, and see if you can get it up the body a little bit more into the throat. And if you feel comfortable, you can even have the breath go all the way to the top of the head. And then just gently release the breath, but let it travel down the same way it went up. So we're going to go the opposite way, letting it fall from the head, the throat, the chest, the ribs. And then once it hits the belly, let it go all the way out to your, can't hold it out anymore. And you can feel the desire to breathe back in. And just do one more round. Breathing in. And then you can open your eyes.
Wow. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you
Yes,
for
of
that.
course.
Isn't it true? And I think our friend Brian Williams introduced me to breathwork also. And
Okay.
I think he was sharing that breathwork started with Navy SEALs in the military. Is that true? Have you heard that?
You know what? I'm not honestly sure. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think it started with the Navy SEALs. I mean, it definitely is a yogic practice. As far as when I say, I mean, because yoga's been around, forever.
Right, right.
So I definitely think it started with a yogic practice, but it might have got more of its popularity or just more people like, you know, doing it or giving
Yeah,
it its due, I guess, because
yeah,
of it being connected to the Navy SEALs. But definitely it's been around much longer than that because of the effects. I mean, you just experienced it, you know. Again, we have these tools within and around us. Our breath is a tool to bring us back to mindfulness. Our
Mm-hmm.
tool, but we don't pay attention to the breath. So all we did differently from what we're doing right now is we paid attention to the breath. We
Yeah,
consciously played with the breath, letting the breath come in the body and gently letting the breath leave the body, and not just, trying to get out of this practice.
right.
And it's that simple that we don't do that enough. We don't take real deep breaths in. They're very shallow breaths coming from the chest. So we're not taking these deep breaths in. And so just starting there, especially if you're a beginner and this is all new to you, right? You're listening, it's all new to you. Just be aware of your breath. Just close your eyes and just breathe in and breathe out. And don't judge yourself if it is shallow. If it's hard to get it in the belly, right? Just start where you are and work on it for 1 minute.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you know what? And I have to correct myself. So I think I said Brian Williams talked about the Navy SEALs. I think what he was talking about was, so he showed me. So I have really bad anxiety. I
Mm.
have, and my anxiety has just gotten worse as the years have gone on. And so Brian and I were actually riding to an NSA event. And NSA, for folks listening, stands for National Speaker Association, which
Yes.
Leticia and I are both a part of. And
Mm-hmm.
so Brian and I were driving to an NSA event, and I was having anxiety. I was having really bad
Mm.
anxiety. And Brian talked to me about breath work. And I think we did an exercise where you breathe in for 4 seconds, you
Yep.
hold your breath for 4 seconds, you breathe out for 4 seconds, and then you hold
Out.
you hold for 4 seconds. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. And you know what? And I'm so silly. I cannot believe I asked you where breathwork started. I'm Indian. I should know this.
There's that.
Oh gosh. Yeah. So Leticia, I realize we're coming up at the end of our segment. And usually I ask individuals, well, if you weren't doing what you're doing now with the mindfulness and the breath work, what was your passion? What would you want to be doing? Although I have a feeling this is your passion, but what else, in addition to this being, I feel like this really is your passion, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but what else would you have been doing if not for this?
Yeah, so I know our time's coming up, but it's funny enough because this definitely is my passion. But speaking is my passion, and speaking about mindfulness and teaching and doing workshops. But in a past life,
Mm-hmm.
this life, past life, I was in radio. I was in the radio industry, and that was the passion. I loved it. I wanted to be in it. It was a very fun 10 years of my life. I started when I was barely 21 years old and ended sometime in my 30s. It was almost 10 years. And I guess that would have been, the trajectory. But I think the core of that was just being able to share a message. And I wasn't sure back then what the message was.
Yeah.
And so I had to go through my own just journey and things, right, that we all go through to find my place here. So, and in
Yeah.
essence, to your point, I am doing exactly what I'm meant to do, but I think that would have been the road I would have continued to go on if things didn't happen the way they happened and led me actually to exactly how I'm supposed to use my voice, because I thought it was that way. Speaking on the
Yeah.
radio, talking about the artists, doing interviews, which was really fun, which was a blast. I wouldn't take back any of it. But I think talking about things that actually help people be better versions of themselves is so much more fulfilling than talking about any celebrities and what they're doing in their life. Which if I love on-air personalities, I love the radio industry still, like I'm still connected to it in other ways, but it just, that wasn't for me, right? But I had to go through that in order to get here. So
Yeah,
I hope that answered
absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. No, it absolutely does. And thank you for sharing. Actually, we have that in common. That's something that I usually used to say, that if I had an option to be something other than a project manager, what is something I would have done? And it would have been either I would have been a dancer or Bollywood actress, or I absolutely would have been on the radio. The thought of being a personality has always appealed to me. And because I did not take that path in life, podcasting now is the
Yep.
next best thing. So,
Yes.
yeah.
And I just want to say, and I know we're wrapping up, but you could still be a Bollywood star. Like I'm gonna put that out there for you if that's something you still want to do. Because deep down, I want to be in a movie, like just
Yeah.
once, like literally in a real, like on set, like have some lines with like Mark Wahlberg or somebody. Like I got to be next to the star here, because I don't
Yeah.
need to be the star in that and that. I was like, and that's one of my dreams too. So I'm like, I still want that dream. I don't maybe want to do it as my career and every day, unless it
Right.
is connected to this mission of helping people and
Right.
speaking of this and help.
Absolutely.
So if there's a way to do that, then sign me up. But if that's still a passion, like why not? Like just for fun to be like, I did it, I'm in it, like watch, there I am. Right. I think that would be so cool. So yeah, like, and you're doing it with the podcast, which is amazing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you for saying that. I'm going to put it into the universe for both of us, that we're going to
Yes,
be
thank
on
you.
screen one day, even if only for a few minutes.
That's it. That's all we need.
Well, Leticia, thank you so very much for being on this podcast. I think this was such a unique episode. And again, I think so necessary, so necessary. So thank you for sharing with the audience the tools that folks can incorporate into their day-to-day lives,
Mm,
tools that could help
yeah.
them be more present, be more mindful, and stress less. So thank you very much.
Yes, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.